The video entitled "The First Cable Ancestor in America, Part 2" ended with Casper Cable and Elizabeth Baker's children. Several lived out their lives in the vicinity of their parents' homestead in Johnson County, Tennessee, and at least two ventured south into the Great Smoky Mountains and beyond. The oldest child, Jacob, headed west into the frontier of Kentucky after his military service during the War of 1812 and reportedly settled near present-day Tompkinsville in Monroe County. Jacob's younger brother, Joseph, born in 1791, married Rebecca Pierce, and they had most of their children while living farther east in Montgomery County, North Carolina, before moving the family to Lee County, Virginia. Joseph and Rebecca's two oldest sons married Hobbs siblings there. Daniel, the oldest, married Mary Ann Hobbs and settled near Big Andy in Lee County, Kentucky. His brother Jacob married Susanna Hobbs and settled in adjacent Wolfe County. At this point, it is worthwhile to back up and trace the Hobbs ancestral line that is closely intertwined with the Cables. The Hobbses were a colorful bunch, to say the least. Vincent Hobbs Sr., born in Dorchester, England in about 1722, arrived in Port Dover, Delaware as a teenager, and was perhaps married twice before leaving Maryland in 1769 for Lee County, Virginia, setting up the eventual encounter with the descendants of Casper Cable. Vincent brought his family to a fort called Yoakum Station in Turkey Cove at present-day Dryden, Virginia, one of a series of civilian-built forts along Daniel Boone's trace that became part of the Wilderness Road. Vincent fathered some interesting characters, including James, who enlisted to fight in the Indian Wars and was gone for more than 2 decades before Vincent, having never heard from him and presumed him killed, sold his son's farm. James reappeared after 21 years and sued his father. In Hobbs versus Hobbs, 1805, it is stated that, quote, Vincent can most assuredly be excused for selling the land, as at this time James was presumed dead, unquote. James was outdone by his brother Vincent Jr., however. Throughout the late 1700s, a Cherokee named Chief Binge and his band had been terrorizing Lee County, Virginia, and in 1794 he was looking for slaves to capture who he could sell, and the Livingston plantation had them. He set one of the buildings on fire and took 2 of the Livingston women with him. They fled across the Clinch River, and when news reached Vincent Hobbs Jr., a lieutenant in the militia, he formed a hunting party that included his brother Job. They ambushed Binge and Hobbs shot him, but not before Mrs. Livingston was hit in the head with a tomahawk and left for dead. She in fact recovered. A grisly letter from a local representative to the governor of Virginia reads, quote, I send the scalp of Chief Binge, that noted murderer, as requested by Lieutenant Hobbs, to your excellency as proof that he is no more, and of the activity and good conduct of Lieutenant Hobbs in killing him and relieving the prisoners. Could it be spared from our treasury, I would beg leave to hint that a present of a neat rifle to Mr. Hobbs would be accepted as a reward for his services, and the executive may rest assured that it would serve as a stimulus for future exertions against the enemy, unquote. The General Assembly of Virginia voted Mr. Hobbs a, quote, beautiful silver-mounted rifle, unquote. The fate of the rifle and whether or not it still exists or was even made is unknown. In any case, Binge's death marked the end of organized Indian rebellion on the western frontier of Virginia. James and Vincent Jr.'s brother Absalom had a somewhat less adventuresome life, but was married twice and raised 2 large families near the Powell River at Dryden. When his first wife Susanna Helvey died in 1825, Absalom, then 62, wasted no time in marrying 30-year-old Mary Ann Ollinger, producing at least 6 more children, including 3 pictured here: DeWitt Clinton Hobbs, David Crockett Hobbs, and Joshua Ewing Hobbs. One of Absalom's sons from his first marriage, another Job, born at Yoakum Station, fathered lots of children as well with 2 wives, the second being only 27 while he about 50. These examples illustrate the limited options for women of the time. Clearly the economics and politics of gender were oppressive for women. Few daughters inherited land because it almost always went to sons, and they had little chance for financial independence. so daughters either depended on their fathers or their husbands. Marriage was generally their only ticket out of their parents' homes. The song The Wagoner's Lad sums it up.
Oh, hard is the fortune of all womankind. She's always controlled, she's always confined, controlled by her parents until she's a wife, a slave to her husband the rest of her life.
Job's first wife, Susan Flannery, gave birth to Mary Ann Hobbs, who would form the first Cable-Hobbs bond, marrying Daniel Cable, grandson of Casper Sr. The Cable-Hobbs family got more intertwined when Daniel Cable and Mary Ann Hobbs's son, Millard Fillmore Cable, married Mary Ann's niece, Sarah Elizabeth Hobbs, his first cousin. Sarah's maternal line is perhaps more colorful than even her parental Hobbs line. Johann Georg Schmidtpeter was born in 1730 in Ettenstadt, Bavaria. At age 22, Johann and his bride Catherine, attracted by the South Carolina Provincial Government Township Act, departed Rotterdam for America on the ship Rowan, arriving in Charlestown in the New Carolina. Johann bought 100 acres of land on the Saluda River in the German settlement known as Saxe-Gotha in present-day Lexington. Catherine soon gave birth to their only child, John Michael Schmidtpeter, in 1753. The settlers suffered frequent raids by Iroquois, Shawnee, and Cherokee bands, resulting in the construction of 24 private forts. The local militia, in turn, killed 22 Cherokee hostages and buried them in Fort Prince George. War parties then burned several farms along the Saluda River and laid siege to the fort. As dangerous as the Indians were to the settlers, that is not what caused the early death of Johann. Instead, at age 31, he became victim of a Lutheran religious cult to which he had joined called the Weberites, an offshoot of the Gifted Brethren sect founded by a Swiss-German settler named Jacob Weber or Weber at Dutch Fork. Other members included Weber's wife Hannah, John Geiger, Jacob Bohart, Michael Hintz, and a, quote, godless colored preacher, unquote, named Frederick Dauber. Jacob Weber began referring to himself as God and Hannah as the Virgin Mary, while Johann was anointed as the Son of God. Dauber was named the Holy Spirit. Eventually, as deities are wont to do, they became quarrelsome and had a falling out. Johann was subsequently revealed as the devil in disguise over some fine point of doctrine, and Weber began referring to him as the Old Serpent and accused him of conspiring with Dauber and Hintz. Things came to a head on February 23, 1761, when Weber convinced his followers that they must rid the world of the devil incarnate, Johann Schmidtpeter, to save the world. In a spasm of righteous fury, Weber, his wife, and 5 others beat Johann to death. The following day, they smothered Hintz to death between 2 feather beds for practicing witchcraft. All were arrested and taken to Charlestown, where they were sentenced to death by hanging. Before Weber was hanged 2 months later, he penned a confession of sorts. Quote, "Then came a great calamity, the ghastly fall. As everyone unfortunately knows, the devil was able to bring me into such great temptation and fall into sin, a fall so deep that I have never before heard of its like, of which Schmidtpeter was the author and instrument." Unquote. A letter was written to William Pitt by the governor of South Carolina, requesting pardons for the others, claiming they were acting under the command of Weber, stating, quote, "Numerous families bear the character of being long known, orderly, and industrious, are very poor," unquote. As a result, they were exiled from South Carolina. Eventually, several Weberites returned to what is now Fairfield and Richland counties, where they founded the Appii Forum Church. Hannah Weber changed her name to Hannah Weaver and returned to Dutch Fork, the site of the murders. It is not known what happened to Catherine Schmidtpeter, then 28, and her son John, just 8. Although records show that someone was paying taxes on Schmidtpeter property for the next 17 years when it was sold to Johannes Kleckley and remains in that family today. The murder of Johann Schmidtpeter and Michael Hintz became known as the Weberite heresy. and has been written about extensively, including a novel written in 2001 entitled With Forked Tongue that is loosely based on the event. Johann and Catherine's son John fought in the American Revolution and married Mary Catherine Kyle. In 4 more generations, their great-great-granddaughter Sarah Elizabeth Hobbs would be born, bringing us back to the cable connection. The next segment will cover Kaspar, Goebell, and Elizabeth Baker's great-great-grandson's connection to the Smith line of descent.